Welcome to Making Democracy Work, a series of programs from the League of Women Voters of Honolulu about the issues that we think are important. I am Pearl Johnson, Chair of the Planning and Transportation Committee. Today we're going to talk about the rail project, and I hope that I will tell you things that you really never knew about the rail. With me today are Tom Coffman, writer, and Bob Loy from the Outdoor Circle. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Tom, let's talk first about something pretty good, the lawsuit. Will you give people the update on it?
Well, the lawsuit was filed in federal court with a broad base of plaintiffs in Hawaii, including the Hawaii's Thousand Friends and the Outdoor Circle, and several notable plaintiffs, Ben Cayetano, Walter Heen, Randy Roth, and Cliff Slater. And the issues have been joined in court. Very soon the city will produce the massive administrative record, which has been hidden from the public up to this point. And on the basis of that administrative record, the case will be litigated. It will be fought out in court and decided by a federal judge. And I think that's progress. That's not easily done. The issues refer to the National Environmental Planning Act or to the Federal Transportation Act, which has rigorous environmental standards which have been ignored. The second big development is a very heavyweight candidate has emerged for mayor, former Governor Benjamin Cayetano.
I'm not sure Ben would appreciate being called heavyweight, but politically.
Nothing about He's a formidable candidate, right?
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about this rail project. Other projects have started from the center so that people can start using it immediately. Our project is starting out in the middle of a farm field and will go all the way to Waipahu. Do you think it's going to have very many riders?
Obviously not. You know, who's going to ride from the middle of an abandoned sugar field to Waipahu? And if they complete the project, which I do not think they will, but if they complete the project, it will go all the way to Ala Moana Center. On a given day, do we go to Ala Moana Center? You know, we don't. You know, once in a long while we go to Ala Moana Center. So it is substantially a enormously expensive. It's beyond comprehension. The cost number, 5.2 billion, 5.4 billion, it varies. From nowhere to just about nowhere. It's pretty close to nowhere to nowhere.
Pearl, you know, the city's done a really poor job of explaining at least part of the reason for why this is being built in the manner that it's being built. And one of the big factors in it is because of the maintenance facility. And where the train can't run unless it has a maintenance facility. And because the city did not put a maintenance facility closer to town, they put it out there by Leeward Community College. There has to be a place to service the trains. That is one of the reasons that this project is starting out near Kapolei, and the first segment ends there at Leeward Community College, right about there where Pearl Highlands and the Pearl Highlands area is what begins the next segment. So they have to have a place to service the trains. They made a decision to put the maintenance facility out there, and so the trains have to go to a maintenance facility. Had they put it in Iwalei or found another more suitable location closer to town, the whole configuration of how the train was going to be built could have and probably would have been different.
Basically, we're of the same point of view, except that the underlying reality of that was that Mufi Hanneman decided that it should be in the country because it was the path of least resistance, and that was the real decider on this. And he has told people that it isn't a secret, and it is the path of least resistance because there isn't anything standing in the way. There's not too much standing in the way. A lot of beautiful trees were standing in the way. It's the path of least resistance because you don't have that dense urban area, and then that corridor where the original Hawaiians buried people very densely in the soft, shifting soils of Kaka'ako, where always, enormous numbers of Hawaiian bones are exhumed whenever anything is dug up. And the city wanted to avoid all of that problem, but get it going and lock the project in. And it was a very political, but otherwise, irrational decision.
They've already started cutting down trees in Waipahu, right?
The city is allowed by the federal government to do certain preparation work in advance of actual construction. The city has played that as being nothing really much to worry about, no real impact. But the truth is very evident to anyone who drives down Farrington Highway in Waipahu. Farrington Highway has been a point of pride for Waipahu residents because of the beautiful tree-lined median that goes really from one end to the other all the way down Farrington Highway. A lot of taxpayer money was spent putting these trees in and maintaining them over the years.
And they've already started cutting them. Can we have pictures of what it looks like now?
What has occurred is that the city has systematically been removing trees from that median.
This is a picture of before. Let's have some after pictures, please.
What has happened is the city has gone in and removed the majority of the trees. They've actually, in fact, I have a report from the city, the most recent report about 2 weeks ago. Out of 343 trees that are going to be affected by this project in the first segment of the project, about 208 of them have been dealt with. And by dealt with, that means the majority of them have been removed and transplanted elsewhere at Department of Transportation sites, various interchanges in H2 and H1 and so on. So this was one of the things that the city agreed to do to sort of mitigate the loss of these trees, not to actually just kill them outright. And the Outdoor Circle is very grateful for that. We think, however, that's really the least that they could do. The problem is what's left for the people of Waipahu. And we have millions of dollars worth of public trees that have been paid for and maintained with public money that have now been removed. We have a point of civic pride for an entire community, this wonderful tree-lined highway that went down through the middle of Waipahu town has virtually been denuded now. And you can see, we have some pictures that show what the medians look like now. The medians were once a combination of beautiful hibiscus hedges and shower trees in some parts and fan palms in other parts, a variety of trees, but it was beautifully planted from one end to the other.
Here's a picture that the AIA put up to show the area where there were trees, and it's being supplanted by this elevated structure. We also have other pictures which will show what a construction zone looks like and the lack of trees. Can we get those up?
This is a picture of Farrington Highway in Waipahu that has been stripped from trees. There were, in this area, I believe there were shower trees lining the median. They've all been removed for utility line work that has gone on in advance of the actual construction of the transit project, of the overhead guideway, the artist renderings of which you saw previously. This is another shot, a little closer towards Kapolei area, also still in Waipahu. That's Fort Weaver Road that you see in the background there. This area was lined with mature shower trees, beautifully blooming shower trees, and a hibiscus hedge all the way down. You can see this particular photo was taken before the hedges were removed, but after all the shower trees were removed. And as I say, these trees, for the most part, aren't dead. They weren't killed. They were transplanted elsewhere at a tremendous expense, I might add, a public expense. And there's one of the areas where the hibiscus hedge is just basically dead now, and they're getting ready to come in and do some utility work in that part of the median. So really, Waipahu is the first real battle zone, if you will, for the transit project. It's being fought out there on a daily basis. The people of Waipahu are already accustomed to it. It's been going on for over a year now. In the end, over 300 trees will have been removed from the Waipahu area. As I say, many of them replanted, but not all of them. Longtime residents will recall the huge, beautiful monkey pod trees in front of Waipahu High School. Those have been removed.
Yes.
This particular monkey pod tree here, this is where the next battle is going to be fought. This is the beginning of the next segment of the transit project. This is pretty much in front of Sam's Club at Pearl Highlands. Right now we are in discussions with the city over the fate of this tree. It looks like the city thinks that they're going to have to remove it, and the Outdoor Circle is fighting as hard as we can to come up with alternatives that will save what is obviously a significant landmark tree in that part of our city. The fact is that this banyan tree and other trees along the route represent a resource to the people of Hawaii and to the people of these communities where the rail project is moving. In Waipahu, for example, where more than 300 trees are going to be removed, as we've said, it's great that they've saved these trees for the most part and replanted them elsewhere. But that doesn't do much for the people of Waipahu. They have lost this tree-lined median. They've lost millions of dollars actually of tangible resources, plus the very immeasurable but extremely valuable aesthetic value that these trees bring to the community, as well as huge environmental benefits. This problem with the project, and as far as the trees are concerned, is that the city has failed to, as required by the National Environmental Policy Act, to offer any type of mitigation to the people of Waipahu for this loss. They talk about, well, when the train station is designed and built in Waipahu, there'll be some lavish landscaping in that area, and they'll do as much as they can to dress up this part of town. But the fact remains that Waipahu, when the project is done and the train comes roaring down the overhead guideway, there's not going to be any trees around like there are now and like there have been for most of the people's lives out there. So this is a serious issue. We tried as hard as we could throughout the entire environmental impact process to get the city to address this issue of mitigation for the loss of trees. They never did. They never have.
Yes, and soon, not soon, but eventually they will be moving into the city with the rail. And so we have some pictures of what the one of the stations in the city what it looks like now. And then the AIA has superimposed what it thinks the rail station will look like afterward. I want everyone to notice that all of the renderings that the city puts up of the elevated rail are shown without tall buildings on both sides. With tall buildings on both sides, it will look like Kona Street near Ala Moana Center, where the lights have to be on all the time, no matter whether the sun shines or not.
Let's think about that last photo that we saw. That is a depiction of, I believe, the corner of Bishop Street and Nimitz Highway. That's
Yes.
the Dillingham Transportation Plaza that you see there on the left with the buff brown stone facade. And let's think about what's catty corner across, as you look across, is Irwin Park, Aloha Tower. This is the core of the downtown central business district. This is the core of downtown Honolulu, and this is what it's going to be turned into visually.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to point out that the entire system is going to be 20 miles of that fixed elevated guideway with steel tracks and then the steel wheels running on it. And it will be situated on those columns every 150 feet. So from Ewa to Ala Moana, through downtown, through Kaka'ako, across the farmlands, which are some of the best farmlands in the world, we will have these columns which are going to be 6 feet to 10 feet across. And where there are stations, there will be grids of columns. So the stations, because the stations are like the size of football fields, more or less, the stations need to have columns here, columns there, so they don't tip over and fall on us. And the area which is going to be most expensive and most problematic, when it gets into the soft soils above Honolulu and in Kaka'ako, will require very long piles to be driven down through the soft soils into coral shells. And the engineer's experience is if you can penetrate those coral shells, and then you drive down another X number of feet, 20 or 30 feet, to the next one, and maybe to the next one. So they have a rough drawing showing there's 3 piles like this, and then they're joined by a huge cap, because that gives it stability, right? And the column then sits on this huge cap. And then there is an acknowledgement in the plan which says, and maybe all of that will not work too. Maybe we need these lateral columns that Pearl briefly mentioned. And by the time you do that, you have a tremendous intrusion into the streets, the cityscape, into native burials, and it is unknowable at this point. There is no engineering design for that. And in fact, each one of those columns, every 150 feet, has to be individually engineered and designed to the circumstances that they find
At that particular site.
Which is one of the reasons that the thing will be so environmentally destructive, and they do not really know how much this is going to cost, because they haven't done that work. All they've done is describe, we may do it this way, we may do it that way.
They've already let out contracts for at half of it, and the amount left is a little over $1 billion. Mm-hmm. And the engineering problems in the city are so much greater than they will have encountered through this soil.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
It's unbelievable that they think that 1.2 billion is going to cover their construction cost.
The remaining money that hasn't been assigned to contracts is supposed to cover 21 stations, and they sort of say 21 stations at 25 million, or 200 and, wait, I'm not saying it right. 25, that's right, 25 million per station, right? These numbers lose their significance because we're talking about billions. 21 stations at 25 million apiece, more or less, and then another 10 miles of rail.
Right, so $500 million plus, just in stations.
Yeah. And whatever it takes to build across this very dense area, which is really a huge X factor. In one of their finance committee meetings, they had a preliminary report. Here's how much money we have spent, and here are the contracts that we've lent. And the original presentation said, da-da-da, we went through all sorts of things, and they said, and it totals up to $2.9 billion. The finance chairman asked questions about, how much was spent before actual contracting and how much will be spent in the original first round of operations, and he pared that down to $1.9 billion. So in one conversation, depending on which person you talk to, it was either $2 billion or $3 billion. We haven't even defined the terms and the vocabulary to understand, how much money this is, let alone specifically how much money it is.
We do have to get to the letter of no prejudice that the city has, that Hart has requested. This letter of no prejudice allows them to spend our money, not the federal money, on construction. Can you go into that a little more, Tom?
Well, they're asking the federal government for a green light to spend 206 or 7 million additional over and above the nearly 400 million that have been spent. And they're asking to start construction. And the federal government needs to give them this letter of no prejudice, meaning we will not hold it against you for spending your own money. We will not perceive this as a political manipulation of your spending money, and then we will be obligated to give you money, give you matching money. And the 206 million will plant these gigantic pillars across the Ewa Plain and over into the settled areas of Waipahu and Pearl City. And they will really virtually lock the city into this project and destroy the visual environment in the process. And it is urgent that the federal government not comply with this. Whether they will or not, we don't know.
I'd like to read from the request for the letter of no prejudice, which Hart addressed to the Federal Transit Administration. Quote, Hart understands that the costs incurred subsequent to the issue of a letter of no prejudice may be reimbursable as eligible expenses or eligible as credit toward the local matching share only if FTA awards a full funding grant agreement for the project at a later date. Furthermore, Hart fully understands that federal funding is not implied or guaranteed by receipt of a letter of no prejudice. Scary, huh?
Well, it means that they're going way out on a limb, betting that the federal government will follow with their share of the funding. I would like to point out that while there's endless obsessive conversation about the federal government money coming, and really that's like why we should chase this project. We'll get $1.5 billion from the federal government. The lion's share is coming from Hawaii taxpayers. It is 1.5. It's $4 billion in that story, and so it's $4 billion from straight out of Hawaii taxpayer pocket, and this 1.5 billion, which is almost certain to not to come, because the federal appropriations for rail have been so drastically cut back. There will be some money, but I think it's very unlikely that it will be money on that scale.
I believe that Governor Cayetano's thought on this is that we can take some of that, ask the legislature to take some of that money that would be going to the rail project and put it into the other infrastructure needs of the city that have been so neglected over the past decade and longer, sewage, roads, and the like.
And to lower cost transit solutions. he is very concerned about transit solutions, but he just thinks that this one is twice as expensive as originally discussed and not affordable given the city's need to, to deal with the problems of sewer, updating the water system, the roads which are falling apart. For a while we had a pothole crusade, but now if you drive down the road, it's a very bumpy experience, right? It's because the roads aren't being taken care of.
It seems that the city has never publicly said what it says in its environmental impact statement, which is that traffic will be worse than it is today after the rail is built.
Mm-hmm. They do say that, and the no doubt there are going to be some people riding the rail, but the rail is really organized as a development project, and it is going hand in glove with subdividing the agricultural lands of Eva, and that will be X number, 30,000 new houses or so. Mm-hmm. And when those houses and new subdivisions in Kunia are dumped onto H1, traffic will be
Well, we've run out of
worse.
time. Thank you very much,
Thank
Bob
you.
Loy of the Outdoor Circle and Tom Coffman. Thank you very much. The League of Women Voters, thanks you.